It's Friday, January 16th, 2026, and this is the Washington Times front page. Thanks for joining us. I'm George Gerbo. President Trump has threatened to invoke the Insurrection Act in Minnesota if protesters continue to attack federal agents carrying out immigration raids. Jeff Murdoch and Susan Ferricchio report the president blamed Minnesota's political leaders for allowing the escalation of violence against immigration and customs enforcement agents. Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison responded by threatening to challenge the insurrection in court. Ellison has already filed a lawsuit against the administration to stop the surge of federal agents in his state. An anti-ICE activist group in Minnesota recently called on protesters to aggressively step up efforts to obstruct immigration enforcement officers by physically attacking them. The online post called for activists to break the illusion of civil society by engaging in cursing and verbally berating officers whenever they show up. Trump has floated the idea of the Insurrection Act before, most recently in June amid rioting and protests in Los Angeles over immigration raids and deportations. President Trump has released a healthcare plan that calls for lowering prescription drug prices and delivering government assistance directly to consumers rather than through insurance companies. Lindsay McPherson and Tom Howe report the president's framework, as the White House described it, largely compiles ideas he's floated publicly with few new details on how he'd want them implemented. The president also wants to make more medicines available over the counter and impose price transparency mandates on healthcare providers that accept Medicare or Medicaid. Congress has been asking Trump to get involved in negotiations for months about healthcare, but for some members, it didn't meet the moment. Abigail Spanberger is set to make history when she's sworn in this weekend as Virginia's first female governor. Seth MacLachlan reports the 46-year-old former congresswoman and former CIA officer will take the oath of office as Virginia's 75th governor Saturday on the steps of the state capitol in Richmond. Her swearing in formally closes the book on Republican Governor Glenn Youngkin's term and caps a swift political reversal in the Old Dominion, where Democrats swept statewide races and expanded their legislative majorities. Spanberger enters office with a budget surplus and steady job growth, but also with looming fiscal headwinds, federal cuts to Medicaid and food assistance programs, and the fate of Affordable Care Act subsidies. Reverberations from the capture and removal of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro are reshaping energy calculations around the world. Joseph Hammond reports countries including China that had significant investments in Venezuela are waiting to see the next move from the Trump administration and the U.S. oil companies the president has called on to revamp the Venezuelan oil industry. By some estimates, China has spent at least $100 billion in Venezuela since the country nationalized its oil industry in 2007. And finally, a forthcoming book claims a former Defense Intelligence Agency counterintelligence official used a psychic to identify spies working in the United States. Bill Gertz reports details of the successful use of a psychic, who is also now a retired DIA official, are contained in former counter-spy Scott Carmichael's unpublished book, Unconventional Method. The use of psychics for intelligence and security operations officially ended in 1995 when so-called remote viewing programs were shut down. Find all today's front page stories at WashingtonTimes.com/front page or on the Washington Times app, and find us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also find us on social media at Wash Times for breaking news, sports, commentary, and more. For the Washington Times, I'm George Gerbo.